Blue Horse Theatre, 2025.
Welcome, my friends, to the Blue Horse Theatre. Now playing The History of Warren County, Ohio, by W. H. Beers and Company. Year 1882. Page 258, Wild Animals. The buffalo and elk, probably never numerous in this vicinity, had disappeared before the approach of the white man. But the bear, the deer, the wolf, the panther, the wildcat, the otter, the beaver, the porcupine, the wild turkey, the rattlesnake, racer, moccasin, and copperhead of the fauna, which have now disappeared, remained in greater or less numbers for some years after the occupancy by the whites. The streams were infested with leeches. Swine were the chief means of the destruction of poisonous snakes from which the county has been almost entirely free for 50 years. Wolves were so numerous and destructive to sheep that several acts were passed by the territorial and state legislatures providing premiums for killing them. Considerable sums were allowed by the commissioners of this county for wolf scalps, the bounty varying at different times from $2 to $2.50 for each wolf killed over 6 months old, and half these sums for those under 6 months. The wolf killer, before receiving his bounty, was required by law to produce the scalp of each wolf killed, with the ears entire. The first law required the whole head of the wolf, with the ears entire, to be produced. He was also required to take an oath, which, in 1799, was of the following form.
I do solemnly swear, or affirm, that the head now produced by me is the head of a wild wolf, taken and killed by me in the county of blank line for county name, within 6 miles of some one of the settlements within the same, to the best of my knowledge, and that I have not wittingly or willingly spared the life of any mother wolf in my power to kill, with the design of increasing the breed, so help me God.
The same premium was offered for killing panthers as for killing wolves, but only 2 panther scalps were presented to the commissioners in this comity in the course of 8 years. $20 for wolf scalps have been allowed in this county at a single meeting of the commissioners. Countless numbers of squirrels were to be found in the woods, and unceasing vigilance was required on the part of the settler to protect his cornfields from their ravages. They sometimes passed over the country in droves, travelling in the same direction. These animals were a nuisance, and were too common to be regarded as valuable for food. The legislature, in 1809, passed a singular act having the double object in view of destroying squirrels and providing the people with a currency. It was entitled An Act to Encourage the Killing of Squirrels, passed and bearing date December 24th, 1807. Its first section provided that each and every person within this state who is subject to a county tax shall, in addition thereto, produce to the clerk of the township in which he may reside such number of squirrel scalps as the trustees, at their annual meeting, apportion to the currency levies, provided that it does not exceed 100 nor less than 10. Each taxpayer, at the time his property was listed for taxation, was to be furnished with a list of the scalps he would be required to furnish. On failure or neglect to furnish the required scalps, the taxpayer was required to pay into the treasury of the township 3 cents for every scalp he was in default, and every person producing to the township clerk an excess of scalps over and above the number apportioned to him was to receive 2 cents for each.
Section 6. Quote, that if any person shall produce to the clerk of his proper township any number of squirrel scalps exceeding the number required of him by the first section of this act, such clerk shall give to the person producing the same a certificate therefor, stating the number so produced in advance, which certificate, on being presented to the treasurer of such township, shall be a sufficient warrant for him to pay to the person holding certificate the amount thereof, calculating the amount at the same rate prescribed in the second section of this Act, out of any money paid into the Treasury, under the provisions of the fourth section of this Act, which certificate, with the receipt of the persons producing the same, shall be by such treasurer filed in his office as a proper voucher his settlement with the trustees of the township, so far as relates to monies paid into such treasury, under the provisions of this Act." Unquote.
The certificates of the township clerk furnished the people with a currency. They were secured by the faith of the township, and were received by the merchant for goods and by the mechanic for work. The law, however, did not prove a great success, and was soon repealed.
Anthony Howard Dunlevy. Obituary, The Western Star, December 8, 1881. A. H. Dunlevy. Anthony Howard Dunlevy, one of the oldest and most prominent citizens of this county, died at his residence in Lebanon, Thursday evening, December 1st, 1881. The Dunlevy family are not only prominent in the annals of the county, but the name is prominent in the pioneer history of the state. The deceased, Anthony Howard Dunlevy, was the son of Judge Francis Dunlevy, who was born in Winchester, Virginia, in 1761. The elder Dunlevy was one of the pioneers of Ohio and was a prominent actor in the Indian Wars. He moved to Columbia, Ohio in 1792, where he for a time taught a classical school. He was a member of the First Constitutional Convention of Ohio, and as one of the original anti-slavery men of that early period, voted to strike the word white out of the Constitution when it was before the convention for adoption. He was the first president judge of the southwestern third of the state, which included the then thriving village of Cincinnati. Judge Francis Dunlevy died in 1839. A. H. Dunlevy was born at Columbia, December 21st, 1793, and was therefore at the time of his death nearly 88 years of age. He came to Lebanon with his father in 1797. He received a classical education and was a playmate, schoolmate, and afterward fellow law student with Thomas Corwin in the office of Joshua Collette, who was one of the judges of the Supreme Court of Ohio. Both were admitted to the bar together in 1817. After his admission to the bar, Mr. Dunlevy opened an office at Lebanon and practiced his profession with success. He was prosecuting attorney of Warren County for 4 years, and in 1837 a representative in the General Assembly of Ohio. But he was never an office seeker. For many years he was editor and publisher of the Western Star, and continued until the last years of his life to contribute to its columns, as well as to the newspapers of Cincinnati. He was the author of many valuable papers on the early history of Warren County, and wrote a small volume on the history of the Miami Baptist Association, which was published in 1869. He was through life an opponent of human slavery, an advocate of temperance, and the earnest friend of education. In 1818 he was married to Lucinda Corwin, cousin of Thomas Corwin, and daughter of Ichabod Corwin, one of the original proprietors of Lebanon. They lived together in the marriage relation 63 years. She died July 14, 1881, in the 81st year of her age. Mr. Dunlevy was a member of the East Baptist Church at Lebanon and lived and died a Christian. He had the full use of his mental faculties and was perfectly rational until the last. He was sensible of his approaching death and talked of it as calmly as of any other event. With one who had been so long and so faithfully devoted to the service of Christ, death could have no terrors. He passed calmly away, in the triumph of a faith which was full of the promise of immortal happiness. Thus ended a long and well-spent life. The deceased believed before the close of his life that he was the oldest living person born northwest of the Ohio River, and that he was the oldest living lawyer of Ohio. He leaves a number of children, grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren.
A.H. Dunlevy, who came to the vicinity of Lebanon when a boy in 1797, thus speaks of the number of snakes.
Quote, "The high weeds in falling down formed fine harbors for snakes, which were as plenty as one could wish, consisting mainly of the black rattlesnake, the racer, the water snake, and occasionally was found a moccasin snake, the most deadly of all. Near where we first lived was a camp of Jenner Harmar as he led his army toward the Maumee in 1790. He had probably remained there for a week or 10 days, as there were 3 or 4 graves there and some half-acre or more cut off, and the brush piled in heaps around the camp. These brush heaps were decayed in 1798, but afforded fine harbors for snakes. And as the warm aim of spring came out, I think hundreds of them could be seen in an hour, passing from one brush heap to another in apparent merry play. I used there to amuse myself in watching their movements and noting their peculiar colors. Every kind of snake seemed to nestle together in these brush heaps. As an evidence of the number of snakes then existing in this new country, I will mention one fact. My father took me once with him to a neighbor's, about half a mile distant, and in going to and returning from that neighbor's, he killed 7 rattlesnakes and gave me the rattles, and that without any particular search. Again, in the first settlements of the country, the watercourses were infested with leeches so numerous that the most active boy would not run across any part of Turtle Creek in summer barefooted and bare-legged without having a number of leeches fasten upon his feet and legs. And if one would walk through slowly, they would cover the feet and legs until they were black. Soon, however, the blood would flow freely, giving the limbs a most disgusting appearance. To get rid of them was a task requiring hard scraping with a stick. Many of our cattle died of bloody murrain at that time, and I now have no doubt the disease was caused by drinking in these leeches in great numbers, though I do not now recollect that this was then supposed to be the cause of that sickness. But as the country settled, snakes and leeches disappeared. There being no rocks to shelter either, hogs soon destroyed both, and for 50 years, this section of country has been almost free from snakes, except the black snake, which is not poisonous." Unquote.
The same writer thus describes the manner of hunting the bear, as he himself had witnessed the sport.
A.H. Dunlevy, quote, "Of all the sports of hunting in early times, the bear hunt was the most exciting. This usually occurred accidentally. I never knew a bear hunt to be regularly organized. Someone in the neighborhood would accidentally discover a bear, and if at a time when the animal was fat and worth possessing, he gave the sound of a horn, known in the neighborhood as a signal of the discovery of a bear and the call for help to capture the prize. Instantly, almost, men on horseback, with rifles and dogs, were on hand. The sound of the horn indicated the course of the bear, and thither the neighbors hastened. For hours, sometimes from morning till nightfall, the chase would continue. The dogs would keep on the track of the bear, but unless they could cause him to take to a tree, they could do nothing with him but to keep his trail and enable the hunters to follow. If they ventured to attack him, they were soon repulsed, sometimes killed on the spot. At last, after many hours' chase, sometimes embracing an area of 5 or 6 miles circumference, the exhausted bear would take to a tree, around which the dogs quickly gathered, and, by their united noise, gave assurance to the hunters that Bruin was at last treed. The signal horn was sounded, and the hunters were soon on the spot. If it was still light, the bear was soon brought down by the unerring rifle. If too dark to see, the tree was watched until morning, and then he was dispatched. The event ended with skinning the bear and cutting up the carcass into as many pieces as would give each hunter his portion, and usually sending a part to each family in the neighborhood. The flesh, though considered by most people a delicacy, I could never eat, but the sport of the bear hunt had no equal with me at that early day or at any time since." Unquote.
Other kinds of game were abundant. For some years, the red deer were as numerous as cattle today. Wild turkeys could be shot or entrapped in great numbers. When mast was abundant, a drove of more than 100 wild turkeys, or large and fat, might be found in the near vicinity of the settlements. And when mast was scarce, large numbers would sometimes come to the barnyards for grain. The rivers abounded with fish. The white and yellow catfish, black bass, red horse and carp could be drawn from the Little Miami by brush drags in wagon loads. My friends and fellow historians, thank you for watching and see you next time. This has been Blue Horse Theatre.
Blue Horse Theatre 2025.